Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first Shalika Marathon Asia 2017 live Q&A session. We're here today with a really international session. As you can see, our main stars of the 2017 season are here with us. My name is Renata. I work in the Shalika Marathon team here in London, and we're joined today with really very important guests. So, familiar faces and a new face to the team. We have Colin Chin, who is the Shalika Marathon Asia Technical Director, who is the Shalika Marathon Manager Global Student Liaison, and a new member of the team, and I have tried so much to say her name right. I know I'm gonna fail, but I'll try it again. That is joining the team in Singapore, and it's gonna manage everything you need to know about the students, logistics, accommodation, everything for the 2017 season. I can see everybody dialing in now. Thank you very much for joining. We're gonna run this in a really, really similar way that we did the past Q&A sessions, but with this small difference. What I'll need you to do is, if you do have any questions, go back to the Facebook group, post in that pinned post at the top your question, and don't forget to include your name, team name, and country that you're from. And again, if your question is specific about your car, please let us know if you're running on an urban concept or a prototype, and your energy type. All this information will just make Colin's life a little bit easier when he answers your question. And just as a recap of our format here today, first, Colin will take you through some really important slides explaining the most important changes in the rules, and then we're going to open up for questions. The key thing today is, of course, give time for your Q&A session. So Colin is going to be really quick, and I'm going to control him really tightly so that he doesn't speak more than 10 minutes. And then we're going to open up for questions. So a lot of people are joining in. Let me go back to the introductions, just so that we give more time for people to join, for you to get your questions ready. Let us do the introductions again. My name is Renata. I work in the Shalika Marathon team here in London. And we're here today with Colin Chin, who is the Shalika Marathon Asia Technical Director. And he's going to be with really important people this week, so everybody should congratulate Colin. He's meeting Ferrari. It'll be exciting for Shalika Marathon. So together with Colin, we have Sarah Engel, who is a Shalika Marathon Liaison Manager, and Zain, who is the Shalika Marathon Asia Student Liaison Manager. Zain is new to the team. She joined this year in Singapore. So I also want to welcome her to the team, and I hope that 2017 season will be a hit for everybody. So we are 3 minutes in. I think we're about to start. So again, just a final recap before Colin starts sharing his screen. This is how we're going to run today. Submit your questions, everything technical or logistics that you want to know. Don't forget to submit your name, team name, and country that you're from. And then if your question is technical and specific about your vehicle, just let us know your category. That means if you're running on prototype. And then your energy type. So ethanol, GTL, diesel, gasoline, CNG. There you go, or better electric. I know it's a favorite in Asia. Colin, it's going to be up to you now. And teams, don't forget, there's a Facebook group post. You should include your question there. I'm grabbing all questions from there to share here on the live Q&A. So Colin, it's with you now. And you're on mute, so just make sure you unmute yourself. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay. Right, so let me begin. Welcome to the discussion. I'm going to cover very quickly the rule changes for 2017, at least most of them. So this is a very quick summary of the changes. As you know, the rules have already been issued on the 1st of September. The link is shown over here. If you have not seen them, I urge you to quickly go and look them up on the Shell Eco Marathon website and download them and read them. Okay, so the major changes to the rules for this year are for the ICE category that no carburetor systems are allowed. All fuel systems have to be fuel injected. And the other big change is that all energy measurements will be done, including electrical consumption from the battery for all vehicles, be it ICE, hydrogen, or battery electrics. And the third major change is that all ICE energy types will be grouped together, right? So those are the very big changes that you should take a note of. A very important tip that I need to urge you all to do is, of course, read the rules. Second tip is to understand the rules. And third, if you do not understand the rules, ask questions from either the Facebook group or from the Shell Eco Marathon Asia website. Okay, so it is fundamental that you have the rules, understand them, and apply them in your vehicle designs. So that's the main thing. Now, going back to the energy classifications, for 2017, we will no longer have individual gasoline, diesel, GTL, ethanol, and CNG. All these will be lumped together under internal combustion in one category. So there is no separate price for gasoline, no separate price for diesel. Instead, we will have more prices for the internal combustion. So instead of 1 and 2, we will have 1 to 6. So that is what we will have for internal combustion. And this is in line with what we are doing for the World Drivers' Championship, where we group the energy groups in 3 main categories: those with internal combustion, hydrogen, and battery electric. So that's what we are going to do for all vehicle categories. And so you will be, if you're in gasoline, you will be competing with the ethanol and the CNG, even though you're different energy groups, but the results will be normalized to the gasoline equivalent, so that is still fair. Okay, we will also measure all electrical energy consumed by applying a joule meter across the battery. So that means all the energy used by the horn, by the vehicle electric system like lights and let's say the spark plugs, all that will be measured. Okay, but we will not apply that in the final result. Though we will probably start doing that from 2018. But for 2017, we will already start all the measurements and measure all energies consumed. So for 2017, you may get by with just the primary energy, i.e. let's say the gasoline or the hydrogen. But from 2018, then we will start counting the other energies that you have used in moving the vehicle forward. Okay, so other things that important are that we will put in a telemetry system in all vehicles. So that means we will be able to track your position on the track, measure fuel consumption real time, and your position on the track as well. So you will all be expected to install telemetry equipment. And the important thing about that telemetry equipment is that it needs power as well, and that must be supplied by your team. So in the form of 12 volts electrical current to be supplied for the telemetry equipment. About horns, we will now allow the use of horns with an independent battery. For example, a bicycle horn, which has its own built-in battery. For example, AAA or AA batteries can be used. So you will not need to use the battery power from your accessory battery, but you can actually have independent battery power for the horn. There is a bit of mistakes in the rules. In one part, it says it is mandatory to use an independent battery powered horn. That is wrong. You may use it, but it's not compulsory. So you can still use a horn powered by the accessory battery. Okay. Another important thing to note is that the horn must produce a continuous sound. Okay, not like a siren or a bird chirping or up and down tones. Okay, because we want people, especially the marshals and the other teams, to know that the horn is a horn. Okay, they must not be confused by horn sounding like a bird or sounding like a siren, or it has to be a very distinct automobile horn kind of sound. Next is the emergency kill switch is now changed. The picture there shows what we will be asking you to put on the car. This will be provided by us, so nothing to worry about. Next one is about the shutdown switches. We still mandate the use of push button shutdown switches. The only difference is that we no longer allow lever type shutdown buttons for the diesel and GTL categories. Okay. Other things in the design is that you must make sure that the wheels do not actually touch the vehicle chassis or body. So please take note for both proto and urban concepts. Next item is that the brakes must act on a metal element, okay, not on the tire itself. We have seen in the past some teams actually try to use brakes that are in contact with the tire, which is of course not very good. Next article 45D is about the dimensions of the car. The dimensions of the car follow the body of the car, not any appendages or extensions that may make it appear to be bigger when it is not. Okay. Next thing is about side doors. We do not want doors that look like the one in the picture here. Okay, that means like a whole roof coming up to act as a door. That is not a door. Okay, so what we want, this is for urban concept cars. Yeah, for urban concept cars, the door must be a side door, not a open top roof. Okay, that's not acceptable. And steering must be by the front wheel. This one 47D is the same for proto and urban. For urban concepts, we need the contact between the brake pedal and the master cylinder via a rigid mechanical link, i.e. with a metal mechanical link, not wires or cables. Okay, that's not accepted. For urban concepts, another big change is that we need the minimum disc brake thickness of 3 millimeters. So that probably will rule out bicycle type brakes. If that's what you're using, please take note, you need to have minimum 3 millimeters. Energy sources I've already mentioned, so I will skip that. And results calculations, as mentioned, we will measure all energies, but we will not apply them in the rules, in the results for 2017. For battery electric cars, please take note, we have a further definition for the batteries. As you know, many teams actually have batteries that are built of sub-units. And what we want is that the first sub-unit must be something in series, okay? Not in parallel. So if you look at the two pictures here, the first picture shows sub-units in series, which is correct. The other one is sub-units in parallel, which is not acceptable, okay, because the BMS cannot act on such a system. All right, and the other important thing to note is that we've always mentioned that the fuse should be as close as possible to the positive terminal of the battery. This applies to all vehicles, okay, battery, electric, hydrogen, as well as ICEs. So please make sure it is as close as possible to the positive terminal. This year we have mandated that it must not exceed 30 cm, but ideally please make it as short as possible because that prevents against short circuiting. All right, the idea behind the fuse is to prevent short circuits of batteries, which can result in fires. Right. For electrical systems, please take note, there's a lot of new things in here. The accessory battery must now provide power for telemetry equipment, as mentioned earlier. And we will install a joule meter across the battery for all vehicles, ICE, hydrogen, and battery electrics. Horns, I've already mentioned. And I know that some teams actually have, let's say, a 48-volt battery. So to supply the telemetry equipment with 12 volts, you need to have a DC to DC power converter to convert it to 12 volts DC and 1 amp rating. Okay. And if for all cars as well, if you're charging your battery, please make sure that you're using the correct battery charger, i.e. the one that came with the battery or something that is purpose-built for charging of batteries, but where you can adjust the settings for the specific battery type that you are using. Also on electrical safety, please make sure that all electrical wiring is nice and neat, not messy, labeled, and far from any moving parts, and all electrical connections are good. For the internal combustion engines, electrical fuel pumps are still prohibited. Please make sure that fuel tanks are far away from any dangerous things, moving parts, hot surfaces, batteries. And please note that carburetors are no longer allowed, and air filters are also not allowed in the intake system. For CNG, not much change, but we've just identified, we've spelled out the system much better, so it is well defined now. And one thing we have corrected is that the pressure relief must go upwards, not downwards. Okay, so that's and we've got all the details of the mini regulator which controls the pressure. I won't explain too much, but you can have a look at that later. For hydrogen fuel cells, we have also defined a little bit on the starting of the fuel cells. You may use the accessory battery if your system, let's say your accessory battery system is completely isolated from the fuel cell output, meaning to say that the accessory battery in no way can power the vehicle. Okay, otherwise you must use an external starter battery. And the joule meter must be installed on the battery for battery electric vehicles, not across the motor controller as done in previous years. And lastly, about telemetry equipment, as mentioned, all teams must install the telemetry equipment. We have not defined it all properly yet, so please watch out for news on this. We will provide more details later. However, what I can tell you is that you need to provide power to the telemetry equipment. So that is 12 volts power with 1 amp capacity. And that must be achieved using your battery and a DC to DC converter. In addition, we need to drill a 32mm hole in your body, your car body, to install an antenna. And this must be quite close to the onboard computer, so about 1 meter distance. And we have a lot of details about other things like the flow meter for hydrogen, liquid flow meter for internal combustions, and joule meter for electric cars, for all cars actually, right? And this is the telemetry equipment for 2016. It will change, so I stress again, we will provide details later, but this is just an example of what we had for 2016 in the Drivers' World Championship. And I ought to mention also that besides the Drivers' World Championship for urban concepts, we will also now introduce a regional Drivers' Championship in all areas. So in Asia, we will also have a regional Drivers' Championship. So that is to feed into the global World Drivers' Championship. Okay, so that's a very quick summary of the rule changes. So I will take the questions now. Renata?
Of course, I was on mute, but now we're back on track. Thanks, Colin. There's been a lot of questions, so thanks all the teams that have submitted their questions. And there's also a record number of viewers watching us live right now, so thanks everybody who joined us. As a reminder again, just if you do have any further questions, there's been a lot of questions submitted already, but if you do have any questions, go to the Facebook group. There's a pinned post there at the top. Include your name, team name, and country, and then let us know your category and energy type about your vehicle. That would just help Colin answer your question. So I'm gonna start by the questions that were actually submitted to us first. And there's been a lot of teams or several teams asked the same question. So if we don't refer specifically to your team, just pay attention on the answer because you have asked this question as well, particularly considering the bulkhead, team registration, considering the doors of the cars. There's been several questions about the same topic, so just pay attention on the question. So without further ado, I said let's start from the top. So Colin, the first question we received was from John Philip from team DL Sud Stallions from the Philippines. And his question is actually related to Article 21, Section A, about the bulkhead isolation. So it is said that the bulkhead should separate the driver from the compartment. Are we advised to close out the gaps from the driver's side to the compartment side by a bulkhead or other materials? And a double question here. And it is also said that it should be an upright partition, meaning it's vertically positioned at 90 degrees.
Okay, so basically the rules from 2016 and 2017 remain pretty much the same. We need to have a bulkhead which isolates completely the driver compartment and the engine compartment. So the main difference is that we have mentioned that it has to be a rigid bulkhead and it has to be upright. So when we say upright, it doesn't necessarily have to be 90 degrees upright, but it has to be at basically maybe at a slight inclination, but it's not horizontal, definitely. Okay, so it has to be able to separate the front, the driver compartment from the energy compartment. That's the main thing. And if there are any gaps between the bulkhead and the body cover, it must be covered up with something which is fire retardant as well. So you will have to fill in the gaps, because if there are gaps, then it defeats the purpose of the bulkhead, which is to separate the front and the rear. So teams will have to do something like putting in some metallic tape or something like that, which helps to fill in the gaps. Okay, but we do need to fill the gaps. Otherwise, you will allow smoke or fumes. Let's say the engine is on fire. We want to prevent the fumes from getting into the engine compartment. So if there are gaps, then it just goes through. So the idea is that all gaps have to be sealed, right? And you do not have to be 90 degrees exactly. It can be at a slight angle, and as long as it is rigid and fire retardant. And it shouldn't be something which melts with heat. Okay, some teams have asked about plastic type of bulkheads, but imagine if the engine's on fire, the plastic will melt and your bulkhead will collapse. So it doesn't make sense then. Okay.
Thanks, Colin. So for all the other teams that asked the question about bulkhead, I think Colin was quite clear on his answer. Now we have a question from Karthik from Team BITS from India. They're running on another concept ethanol. So their question is about Article 62F. And it says, so Article 62F stipulates that no air filters can be used. Are we supposed to leave our intake manifold unprotected, or is there some other arrangement that can be done?
Well, basically, we do not allow air filters in the air intake manifold. I don't think it's a big issue because, first of all, your vehicle is going to be covered, so there should not be any big particles flying into the engine. Secondly, is we are not driving for very long distances, so there's likely to be no issues running for a short time with no air filters. So just leave it as it is, no air filter, that is perfect. And it also reduces your weight.
Thanks, Colin.
Okay.
Another question here from Marwan from Team Helwan Super Mileage from Egypt. They're running on a prototype gasoline. And their question is about Article 57, Section 1, is about the horn. And I guess a lot of other teams had similar questions. So is it mandatory to install a horn running on a separate built-in battery?
As I already mentioned in the discussion, my slides earlier, it is not mandatory to install a horn which has its own power supply. Okay. In the rules, there is a mistake. Okay. What we now ask is that you can use that, okay, if you so wish, but it's not compulsory. For 2017, you are allowed to use independent powered horn. So that means you don't run off the accessory battery. So, but it is not mandatory. There's two conflicting statements in the rules. So the answer is, it's not mandatory. You may use one, but it's not mandatory. Okay, sorry about that. There was an oversight because we changed our minds halfway just before we finished the rules, and that's why there was a bit of conflict there. Okay, sorry about that, but it's not mandatory.
Thanks, Colin. What we can also do is try to submit a correct version of the rules. So Sarah and I can take that on board to avoid any of these questions after this Q&A. And also, Marwan actually also asked us about which Colin just replied. So I hope that answer was helpful to you. Now our question is from Jan or John. I'm going to say Jan, or Mikhail from, or Michael, maybe Jan Michael, I'm not sure, from team PUP Manila. And they're running on an urban concept gasoline. Their question is about Article 51. So it says a parking brake function is required in order to keep the car stationary during technical inspection and fuel measurements. And you must provide a brake force of at least 50 newtons. Is this parking brake different than the brake pedal? Does it need to be like a handbrake used in regular cars?
Okay, the answer is correct. It has to be like a handbrake in normal cars. Okay, why we have a parking brake is that once the parking brake is engaged, the car is immobile. You do not have to press it any further, unlike your normal brakes where you have to press it or engage it to have it working, right? So a parking brake, once you lock it, it's locked, and the driver does not have to have his leg or his hands on the pedal. Okay, so it is like a normal car. Okay.
Thanks, Colin. And so that team also submitted a question about the bulkhead. So I hope you found Colin's answer good for you. And another important question from the same team is, since the carburetor will no longer be allowed, can we use a carburetor to EFI converted engine? His question. If we can use it as, I'm not sure if you got that.
It's not very clear to me. If a carburetor is not allowed, you cannot use a carburetor. You must use a fuel injection or EFI engine. Okay, so normally what teams do is use air pressurized system where the air is providing the pressure for the fuel injection, and you may control the injections electronically or electrically, but the fuel pressure is derived from compressed air. That's one option. The second option is to actually use a mechanical pump, which is driven off the engine, not using the battery, but off the engine. All right, so that is what we need. Okay,
thanks.
No carburetors. Yep.
And now let's just go with a question for Zai. And her question, the question is from Seeing from Team Genesis from Malaysia. They're running on a prototype battery electric vehicle. And their question is actually about Article 2. So Article 2, of course, mentions that the team manager can only be responsible for one vehicle. But then she says, how should I fill in the team member information on her team? Shall I fill in her name twice, one field as team manager and the other field as a driver? Or can we leave it only as one field completed as the driver? Who's going to take that one?
I can take that actually. The manager and driver should be different people.
Well, that was easy. Thanks, Colin.
Yeah, so please make sure of that. I'll just tell you when we have the all the briefings in the Echo Marathon, we require both the team manager and the driver to be present at the briefing. So they are two different people. Okay.
Thanks, Colin. They also asked about the bulkhead isolation, so I think that was a common doubt, but I know you've taken that a few times. So now we have a question from Karen Mittal from Team Super Mileage India, and they're running on an urban concept CNG car, and their question is, according to the rules, the doors are supposed to open sideways, or shall we, basically their question is if the door should be sideways or if it should open on the side. I guess they're just, it's a bit confusing, but their question is if the doors can open on top of their car. They say their car is similar to the Mercedes Gullwing door, which incorporates almost 90% of the roof. Is that still allowed?
Okay, basically we need to have a door which is separate from the roof. So I think that would be allowed. as long as it is gull-wing doors are allowed. But I hear you. You still need to have a roof. Okay, so there must be some rigid portion of the body which forms the roof. It cannot be like what I showed you in the picture earlier, where the whole roof lifts up. That is not allowed. Okay, so if it's a gull wing with still some portion of roof around, I think that would be acceptable. Okay,
thanks, Colin. Of course, if you have schematics of your car already, why don't you send them over to the Shalika Marathon Asia email, and then Colin can have a clear look and give you a proper answer. But without these schematics, it's difficult for him to say. So the team actually submitted a very important question about the CNG cylinders, and they say that according to the rules, the team will be provided with a CNG cylinder on site. So their question is the cylinder directly going to transfer the fuel to the vehicle, or are we supposed to add a storage device for the fuel beforehand?
The cylinder is the only storage supply on board the vehicle. From the cylinder, it will go to the mini regulator, which is defined in the rules. Please look up the rules. And all you will need to supply from the cylinder is connections, pipe connections, one for the engine, okay, going to the fuel injector, another one for the safety release valve, and you also need to provide some power supply to the regulator to enable control of the solenoid valve on the regulator. But you do not need to provide any separate storage. So from the cylinder, it will go straight to the engine via the fuel injector. Okay, of course, the control will be about 3 bar. That's what we are controlling it at. Okay.
Thanks again, Colin. Now we have another question, or a question from Shaima Mohammed from Team Asud from Egypt. They run on an open concept battery electric car. And the question is about Article 28 related to visibility. So should the mirrors of the car be placed outside, or can it be placed inside of the vehicle?
That's a good question. The mirrors can be placed either outside or inside. It doesn't matter. The main thing is that the mirrors function as mirrors, i.e. when the driver is in the vehicle, he or she can see rearwards of the car using the mirrors. Okay, so it doesn't matter, in or out, doesn't matter.
Thanks, Colin. Now a question from Jacao Suyo from Team Blue Knights 1 from the Philippines. They're running on prototype gasoline. And one of their questions is about Article 7, Section J. All teams are required to install at least 1 joule meter to measure the quantity of total energy provided by the battery. So their question is, will the teams be the ones to provide that joule meter, or will the Shalika Marathon technical team provide that to the teams on site?
Okay, thanks. That's a good question. Shell Eco Marathon, the technical team will provide the joule meters from Shell, and we will also provide all the telemetry equipment. So you don't have to worry about putting your own joule meter on board. We will supply them. That is to make sure it is fair for all teams, because then we all have a standard joule meter to measure against. Okay, but thanks, good question. We should have clarified that.
Thanks, Colin. He actually submitted about 7 questions, so I'm going to give him a break and ask one more question that he asked. And he's asking, can we drill holes into the vehicle's outer shell to ventilate the driver and the engine compartment? Colin?
Sure, that is perfectly possible, and up to you where you want to drill holes. The main thing is that the body is still covered. I mean, a hole will not, I think, significantly reduce the body coverage. As long as structurally it is sound, then that's fine. Having holes for ventilation is good.
Thanks, Colin. And now one more question.
Thanks.
From Rich from Team Cardinals. Hiraya, I think, from the Philippines. They're running on an urban concept diesel car. And one of their questions was about Article 46B. The covering of the wheels and suspension must be a rigid, integral part of the vehicle body. Can we have detachable wheel covers, but it's bottled on the rest of the vehicle body? Is it considered rigid?
I would not consider that an integral part of the body. So what we like to see is that the wheel covers are essentially part of the body, not something which you can attach or detach to the body. So it should be really integral, means it's one piece. That's what I understand it to be. Okay.
Thanks, Colin. And now they did ask the question about the brakes, because it's 3 millimeters, and you did mention the brakes, the bike brakes might not be good. Correct. So they might have to submit medics for you on that one. And they do have a question about logistics. So I'll refer to Zain and Sarah. They're questioning if the team is allowed to change their team members, or as they called, lineup, after phase 2 is closed. Girls?
So they can actually change their team members up to the close of phase 3, but after that, they shouldn't be changing their team members anymore. So they can go into the system and update the particulars of the team members that they actually want to come to the event, but after phase 3, there shouldn't be any more changes in the lineup.
Thank you. So let's go with another question now from Elaine from Team Aguila from the Philippines. They're running on a prototype gasoline, and one of their questions is about Article 69. We would like to ask, what does the DC-DC converter mean? Would it come with the auxiliary battery or from the engine itself?
Basically, a DC-DC converter is a transformer that steps down the voltage from, let's say, 48 volts to 12 volts. So it is an electrical component. It's not from the engine, but it's an electrical component that converts, let's say, voltage from the battery to a lower voltage, right? So that's what it does. It's not from the engine.
Thanks, Colin. And now we are almost running out of time, so if anybody has any further questions, please submit them. I have a few more lined up, so I can still ask those. But again, if you do want to ask your question, just don't forget, please include your name, team name, country, and then let us know if you're running on prototype, urban concept, or your energy type. So let's go now with a question from Dehuyo, or you, I think, Dehuyo, from team NTU 3D printed car from Singapore. They're running, of course, on an urban concept, and they're running on bioelectric. Their question is about the 2017 rules, Chapter 1, Article 46D. All new urban concept vehicles from 2017 onwards must have a side door. May I know the definition of a side door, and could you give them an example? Again, I know you've answered one question about the door. I just worried, I guess, about their vehicle, and then asking if a Raptor door counts as side door. Colin?
I'm not sure what is the Raptor door, but essentially a side door is something that opens from the side. If you recall the picture I showed earlier, where we have a roof cover or roof that opens up to act as a door, that is wrong. Okay, so what we want is something that is separate from the roof and which opens to this, which opens sideways. Okay, it doesn't have to open sideways, but allows entrance from the side rather than climbing up into the car. If you recall that picture I sent earlier, right, where you have to climb into the vehicle after opening up the roof. That is a roof door, not a side door. So a side door means you enter from the side without having to climb into the vehicle. All right, hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Colin. So now let's get a question from Rajat from Team Averera from India. They're running on a prototype battery electric car. One of their questions was about the bulkhead. So of course, Colin has answered that a few times today. And then their second question was about the telemetry system. So in the telemetry system, the onboard computer needs a power supply. So whether we have to supply power using an accessory battery, 12 volts, or do we need to supply power from the propulsion battery pack, 48 volts, by DC-DC step-down converter? Colin, could you maybe help them with that?
Okay, let's be very clear here. For all vehicles, only one battery is allowed. Okay, so if you're in the ICE category or the hydrogen category, that is your accessory battery. If you are in the battery electric category, there is no accessory battery. There is only the propulsion battery. So in all vehicles, only one battery. The only exceptions are if you have, let's say, a self-powered horn, or in cases, some cases, the GPS systems where you have, again, the AAA or AA batteries. That's okay, but that's not really going to supply the telemetry equipment. The telemetry equipment needs 12 volts, 1 amp. So that has to come either from your accessory battery or your propulsion battery. You are not allowed to put any other batteries to supply that. It will have to come from your only allowed battery, and that would probably need a DC to DC converter if you do not have a 12-volt battery. So I know a lot of ICE cars actually run from 12 volts, but some, especially the battery electrics, may run on higher voltage. So then you will need a DC to DC converter. Okay. Okay. So be clear. Only one battery.
Thanks, Colin. And again, I think this might be a record in terms of how many people are watching us. So thanks everybody who's joining. And we'll still have time for a few more questions. So don't worry, I'll get to all of those. Now let's go to a question from Byron from Team Enduro Kiwis. Of course, they're from New Zealand. They're running on a prototype, on an urban concept battery electric. And their question is, or one of their questions regarding the Article 57, Section C, point 3. So our team has, and I guess that talks about lithium-ion batteries. So our team has already designed and built a battery pack using lithium-ion type cells based on the 2016 rules. And the advice from our BMS manufacturer, Orion BMS. The advice we received was to first parallel cells to the needed capacity. The connected parallel groups in series. The BMS manufacturer has provided many reasons, safety being a major point, for the parallel first then series. What is defined as a cell and what is defined as subunit? Depending on how this is interpreted by the rules, parallel groups of cells from a subunit and subunits are connected in series and as the rules require. So Colin, I know that there was a really long question and I probably confused everybody, but can you maybe clarify it to Byron?
Okay, so the basic initial connections have to be in series, not in parallel. Maybe I should go back to the slide pack so that it's clear. Can I share the screen again? Okay, I hope you can see the screen. So basically, a battery is defined, first of all, as two terminals. Okay, so one positive and one negative terminal. In between that positive and negative terminal, you can have any combination, well, various combinations of cells. And basically, what people do is put the cells in various subunits or strings. So they can be parallel or in series. So the one on the left shows cells in series, and the one on the right here shows cells in parallel. Now, we have specified in the 2017 rules that the subunits must first be in series, not in parallel, because the battery management system is not able to control the currents in individual cells like this. It can only control the currents in a series combination. Okay, so that is why we specified it as such. So intrinsically, you cannot have a BMS system that operates off a parallel string. Okay, it must start first of all in series, and then you can connect them in parallel. But at the cell level, we need them to be in series. Okay, to make a subunit. Hope that makes sense.
Thanks, Colin. Doesn't make much
Okay.
sense, but I'm hoping the student will understand. Let's get another question here, and I'm going to a different country that hasn't submitted any questions now today. So I'm going with a question from Syed from team EAK17 from Pakistan. They're running on a prototype. So their question is there any restriction on the design of the car submitted in phase 1? What he means is how much can they actually change or deviate from their submitted design to the one they come to the event with?
Okay, that's a good question, and I think that's something often asked. Basically, you may change your car design from phase 1 at any time, and even phase 2 you can change your design at any time, because our selection is done by phase 2. After that, you might still need to make improvements on your car, but final determination of whether you meet the rules will actually be at the event. Okay, so whether you meet the rules is going to be in March. Okay, not in February. It's not going to be in phase 3. It's going to be in March. So you can make changes to your vehicle anytime between now and March. Okay, you do not have to tell us, but what I can tell you is that you cannot change your vehicle category, whether it's urban or proto, and you cannot change your energy group, okay, energy type. Other than that, you are free to make changes to your design, your body, your chassis, to anything within the vehicle, as long as it complies with the rules. Okay, so in fact, I would encourage you to look at ways to improve your vehicle a lot in the months that follow, to make sure that it complies with the rules. Yeah, so the only thing that counts is that when you come to the event in March, we will check your car against the rules. That's it. Yeah, before that you can change anything you want, except the energy group or the vehicle category. Okay.
Thanks, Colin. And now a really important question, actually, coming from India, about the selection process for phase 2. And I know that this year is going to be a really... So this is from, I think I'm going to say this right, but I think is Hirishkash. I think is this. I'm really sorry if I didn't get that right. I'll practice for next time. From team Futuremic from India. They're running an urban concept gasoline. So they're saying, according to the rules, previous performances of the team will be taken into consideration for selection in phase 2. Can you please elaborate on the factors that are considered for a team to be approved after phase 2?
Okay, so let me just give a bit of background first. Okay, at the event, we want to see teams succeed. Okay, that means we want to see teams that can actually get a valid run and post a result. Okay, so we've seen in the past years that teams sometimes struggle to get through technical inspection and sometimes struggle to even get a valid run on the track. So a team that has a previous track record in the Shell Eco Marathon, of course, has some advantages, and we will look at that in considering whether the team is going to be selected. But I have to say that not all teams have had a chance to take part, so we cannot rely on that completely. We will also look at the quality of their submissions, as in how well they comply with the rules, and it's up to the team to demonstrate to us how well they comply with the rules. And also, we also like to see the degree of progress they have made. I mean, how complete is their car, for example, before we decide. And I have to tell you, it is a very tough selection process because we have a lot of teams applying, and I cannot select all of them. So it is up to the team to demonstrate to us how compliant they are with the rules, especially if you're a first-time team. You really need to show how you comply with the rules, and you can do that by the pictures that you send. Yeah, read through the rules and imagine how you need to demonstrate that to us, because if you just give me a picture, I only go by that picture and nothing else, or whatever documents you send. So if you are not able to communicate your compliance with the rules and your readiness of your vehicle, then the chances are a bit slimmer for you compared to other teams. The other thing is that I have to also mention that there are some universities that send many teams, many applications, and we cannot accept so many teams from one institute, just to be fair to other institutes who are also wanting to compete. So even if you have 5 good teams from one institute, regrettably, I will have to cut down to 2 at most. And given the number of institutes that we have applying, in theory, I should only give 1 per institute. So if you've got 2, that's already a bonus. And probably that is due to previous history and demonstration of your capabilities. So those are the key criteria: previous track record and quality of your submission. Yeah, and of course the degree of completion and readiness, if you can demonstrate that. Okay.
So close. I was on mute, but I'm back now. So there's a question now from Cam Thompson from Team Enduro Kiwis from New Zealand. And their question is about, he says Article C, I think probably there's a number missing there, that about the vehicle bodies, that it must not include external appendages that might be dangerous to other participants. So their question is, does this include the arms and wing mirrors themselves, a thin bar, smaller than 5 millimeters radius going from the body to the wing mirror? Colin?
Yes, it would include everything, including the mirrors. If it has sharp edges or things like that, which could potentially injure somebody who is walking around the vehicle, or if you have some contact with another vehicle on track, yes, that would be considered dangerous. So anything that is sharp or protruding in a dangerous way, we would prohibit. So the main thing is, when you are designing the vehicle, just think about the ergonomics of it, and you know, if you're going to be walking around the car, is it likely to injure somebody? And that will be your answer. You know, you need something that is intrinsically safe to people working on the car or walking around the car, or even on the track if you happen to bump into anybody or other cars. So yes, it covers everything.
Thanks, Colin. So unfortunately, we will only have time for one more question, and then we'll have to wrap up. But the teams that, of course, have submitted a lot of good questions there, we'll select the main ones, ones that most teams have asked the most, and we'll come back to you with a better or comprehensive answers on the Facebook group, so don't worry about that. Our last question of the session today is, sorry, I lost that one, but I'm back now. So it's from Bishu, from Team ASU Racing Team from Egypt, prototype internal combustion. Is it okay not to include their front tires inside the body? Again, they are running on a prototype car. Colin?
For prototype cars, it is not essential to have the wheels within the body. Okay, so it is only applicable for urban concept cars. For prototypes, you may have the wheels outside the body. Okay.
Thanks, Colin. And thanks to everybody who have submitted your questions. I think we received easily more than 70 questions today. We unfortunately, we won't have time to answer them all. But thanks everybody who submitted their questions. Now we're just gonna go, as we always do, let's go around the table and see any questions or comments that might come up. One thing that Colin will have something to say about that is about the track layout for 2017. So Colin, why don't you tell us a little bit about that and then give us your closing remarks?
Okay. First, I regret I cannot tell you the track layout at the moment. Suffice to say that it is outside the convention center. It will be on a relatively flat area. It's a tarmac, so pretty much a flat area. It is actually the place where we actually have an aeroplane exhibition. So it's a huge piece of tarmac, and we will build a track probably between 1.2 to 1.4 kilometers long. There will be, of course, some straight, some turns, and the width will be, in most cases, more than 7 meters. But basically, it is just a big parking lot, and it is not a real road as such, but it has the surface of a road. There will be some places where there are gratings and things like this, which is typical of normal roads, but it will be a purpose-built track in this case. And distance would be, total distance for running will probably be about 12 kilometers, just like in Manila. But depending on the actual length of the track, we will define the number of turns that how many laps you need to make. Okay, so that is a bit about the track. We will give you more updates as we get closer. Unfortunately, we can't define the track as yet due to various reasons, and we will let you know later on. And for my final remarks, as always, read the rules. Okay, please make sure you read that. There are many times teams come to the event and during inspection they have something which is off, and then we tell them, did you read the rules? We show them the page in the rule book and they say, oh, I didn't read that. I didn't know about that. Okay, so thing is, to be at the event and pass technical inspection, you must comply with the rules. And the only way you can comply with the rules is if you read and understand the rules. So please don't forget to do that. Make sure you read line by line and make sure you understand whatever rules are applicable to you. Ask the relevant questions and make sure you comply. Okay. Second thing is try to build your car as quickly as possible and test it and make sure that it is running. And it's not enough to just build a car. You need a car that can run, okay, and run a race distance of about 12 kilometers. So if you haven't tested it out, I urge you to build it early and test it out. Otherwise, you might be in for surprises during the competition. And sorry, I talked too much, but the next thing you also should do is do check out the tech tips which are available. They give you a lot of tips on the roll bar, on the bulkheads, on the tires, etc. So please look at the tech tips. They're easier than reading, so I urge you to have a look at it. But they do not completely replace the rules, okay? And at any time, please feel free to email us or put something on Facebook. Okay, that's it for me. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Colin, our technical guru. So now, Sarah Zain, I think. Any comments or remarks for the team? Sarah?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Just a couple things. First of all, thank you everyone who joined the call. I hope you found it useful. I do have a couple of remarks. I'm sure Ziying will help me as well, but Phase 2 is closing very soon. As you know, the deadline is next week, and a lot of teams haven't submitted Phase 2 yet, so we want to make sure you know the deadline is next week. We want to make sure that you know you have to click on Submit. If you don't click on Submit, your registration isn't valid, and we won't read it. So please make sure you put all that information there and work hard over the weekend and this coming week to get everything ready. If you have any questions, of course, you can send Ziying an email at the ecomarathonasia@shell.com email address. Please note that any questions via Facebook Messenger aren't going to be taken into account. The only official ways for you to ask any questions are through the email address and through the Facebook group. So please don't use Facebook Messenger. We won't look at those questions. I think Ziying also has a couple more things for you, but I wish you all a pleasant evening, and I'm going to go explore Singapore tonight.
All right, so I think Sarah already covered the very urgent need for you guys to submit or start working on your post, because only 40% of you guys have begun on phase 2, and phase 2 is much more demanding in terms of details and time to submit. So really just begin typing in the fields and filling out the information that you need. And then the second thing that I want to talk about is we have posted a new kind of community rules for the Facebook group for housekeeping purposes and to keep the group useful for everyone. And so I'm really going to start posting the threads for the questions and sorry, I was just distracted. So we're going to post a questions thread where all your questions should be made as comments. So it will be very much like what we had today with with this Q&A and how you submitted the questions beforehand under the post. So we'll have such a thread going forward for all the for all the questions, so that there's a central place where we can actually answer your questions, and you can also see what other teams ask. So you'll benefit from that as well. And then the second thing is that we'll have a progress and achievement thread where you should post all your pictures. And we want to celebrate with you, and we want to but we want also a place where we can keep all this information, and a thread would be a good way of keeping all of this in one place. So in the future, we'll like it if you could keep to these housekeeping rules. Yep. So that's all for me. Very nice meeting all of you.
Well, thanks everybody who joined us today. Thanks for Colin and the girls who are joining us from Singapore. As I mentioned before, if you didn't catch us in the beginning, Colin has a really exciting event this week. So Colin is meeting Guy Levitt, who is Shell's fuel engineer with Ferrari, and Kimi Raikkonen this Thursday for a really exciting Q&A with some of our teams ahead of the Singapore GP. So make sure you follow Shell Eco Marathon on Twitter, follow Shell on Facebook, and on our Instagram, we'll be posting some really exciting content to all of you. And related to the 2017 competition, as Colin said, please read the rules. Everything that we have as official information is being shared on shell.com. So don't trust anything you see or hear in any other mediums that is not official information by Shell, hosted on shell.com. The girls are working really hard to update section there, so watch it. As Colin said, the tech tips are great. They are available on YouTube and on shell.com as well. Again, follow us on Twitter. You can submit your question there as well. We'll make sure to answer them. As Sarah said, Messenger is not an official communication channel, just a Facebook group. Your question or answer to your question should be able to help everybody. Good luck with phase 2. Don't forget the deadline next week. Let's all wish good luck to Colin. Good night to all of you. Have a great night ahead of you. I still have a really good day ahead of me here in London. So I'm not sure I'll see you again anytime soon, but see you next time. Good luck. Read the rules and make sure you submit your application. Bye, people.
Bye, everyone.